Hi coders. So now we finally get to chapter 16 in your book, which is those dreaded external cause codes. So as you have determined by now, external cause codes have their own index, which is after the table of drugs and chemicals in your I-10 book. Okay, so remember at the very beginning when we talked about I-10 coding, we talked about making sure that we used all the codes necessary to tell the full story. Okay, and so this is where external cause codes become really important, especially for insurance companies, because if we're going to talk about a condition or an injury due to an accident, they're going to want those the insurance company is going to want those external cause codes on there to know which insurance company should be paying this bill. So if it were an auto accident and it's billed to the health insurance, then they're going to kick out the claim because they're going to think that auto insurance should be paying this claim. So that's why external cause codes are always really important to tell the whole story. So after you find your codes for the diagnosis, then you have to go and add your external cause codes. So, in the front of your book, it tells you which order they need to go in. So take a minute, pause the video, and go to the front of your I-10 book. Mine is on page G27, and look at the section where it says Chapter 20, External Causes of Morbidity, V00Y99. So when you look there, you see that it says that external cause code can be used with any other I-10 codes. Okay, they're also to be used for the length of the treatment. Okay, and then it tells you what order to put them in. So you put the place of occurrence, the activity, and then the status. And then if there is a cause, so you'll see here in your book, we talk about cause, so like accident, fall, etc. Okay. All right, so you need them in that order. The cause, if there was a fall, the place, the activity, and the patient status. Okay, so if we're looking up an accident, a car accident, we're looking up the keyword of accident. Okay, and so pause the video now and go back to your external cause code index and just look up the word accident and see how many entries there are there. I think there's pages and pages of possible examples. Okay, if the patient fell off a ladder, you're looking for fall. If they were struck by a baseball, you're going to look up struck. So it's a little bit different than when you're looking up your I-10 codes in your regular alphabetical index. Okay, when you look up your place, you're actually going to look under place. And then it'll tell you, it's going to say things like, home, and then it might narrow it down to a room in the home, okay? Then activity, you're going to look up activity. And then for that last one, where it says patient status, you're going to look up status. And it's going to show you, it's going to give you options of child assisting in compensated work for families, civilian activity, leisure activity, military activity, all those kinds of things. Okay, so they want to know why you were doing the activity, or why the patient was doing the activity. Okay, so I know it's a lot, and that's why when you get to those cases that have external cause codes in them, there's a lot of codes. Okay? All right, so let's go through this chapter a little bit more. So this kind of describes your cause, your place, your activity. Okay? All right. We talked about this in the last video a little bit as far as fractures. Anytime that you have a fracture, which are going to be S and T codes, just about every single S and T code is going to need that seventh character. And so, as I talked about the last time, you have to go back to right under where the category is, the 3 characters. And it's going to say the appropriate seventh character to be added to each code from this category, and it lists them. Okay? And remember, your X is your placeholder. So if for some reason you only have 5 characters, but you have to have a 7th, you have to use that placeholder of an X. Okay? A lot of them are probably going to have 6 characters and then you add the 7th anyway, because remember, most of those are going to have laterality, so they're going to have right and left. But there could be a few where there are only 6 characters. So here's an example using those AD and S codes that I was telling you about as far as status of care. Remember that in your homework, it may not really specifically say initial, but typically it's going to be initial unless it says something like the patient's coming back for care, etc. Also remember when we talk about fractures, okay, so we have routine healing, delayed healing, union, non-union, malunion. We also have sequela or a late effect. Trying to get to the page that talks to you about late effect. Okay, so also included in your chapter 16 is the table of drugs and chemicals. So, and when you think of drugs and chemicals, you might think of like bad things, and that's not necessarily what it means. Okay, so let's talk about the definitions of these. So let's go back to this one where we talk about adverse effect. Okay, an adverse effect means that the patient, let me flip over here to this page for you. Okay, so here it is in your book. Adverse effect means that all of these conditions are met. It means the medicine was prescribed correctly, it was taken correctly by the patient, meaning the correct drug, the correct dosage, the correct route, the correct timing, all that stuff. They did everything right, but the patient still had a reaction. Okay, so you need to you would code the actual condition, whether it was like a rash or whatever it would be, and then something from the table of drugs and chemicals. Okay. Then also you're going to see in there, so here's where we talk about poisoning. So if you look across, let me go back to the top of that table. Okay. So poisoning doesn't mean, it could mean something bad, but not necessarily. So let's say it was an accidental. A child gets a hold of something. Okay. So accidental, unintentional. Intentional self-harm, that means that there was intend to hurt. Okay. Assault. Okay. And then if you're not sure, you know that there was poisoning, but you're not sure if it was an accident or intentional. Okay. And then we also have this column over here for underdosing. So think about when a patient takes insulin, okay, and they don't take enough. Okay, that's underdosing. And so then over here we've also got examples of why did they underdose. So if they didn't take their insulin, or they didn't take enough insulin because they can't afford it, for some other reason, and this is intentional. If it was unintentional, they just forgot. Okay? So again, telling the whole story. All right? So we also have to remember, make sure that we code those. Okay, so now let's talk about burns. Okay, first thing, there's a difference between a burn and a corrosion. A burn is heat. Corrosion is a chemical. Okay, so you have to make sure that you code it correctly depending on the cause. Okay, so here we have burns. We have lots of codes anytime we have burns. The first code is the site and the severity. So left arm, 1st degree. Okay, that's what I mean by site and severity. Then, and if you have more than one site, you're going to have more than one site and severity code. So after you code all of your sites and the severity, meaning 1st degree, 2nd degree, etc., then you go to extent, and that's T31. Okay, T31 is where you're going to code your total body surface area. And then you're going to use external cause codes to describe why the patient got burned in the first place. Okay, so here's some examples of site and severity. But then once you go to like a T21, so pause the video and go to T21. So we see the T21, well, so first of all, we see that we're going to have this 7th character, an AD or S. So then we see that the 0.0 is unspecified. We see the 0.1 is 1st degree of the trunk, 0.2 is the 2nd degree of the trunk, and 0.3 is the 3rd degree of the trunk. Okay? So it's going to be more than this. It's going to be much more specific because you're going to have a 7th character. So look at like T21.36. This is where where you would use a placeholder. Okay, so if your code is T21.33, a 3rd degree burn of the upper back, that's only 5 characters, but you got to have 7. So it's going to be T21.33X, and then the AD or the S is the 7th. Okay, so I'm going to stop here, and then I'll pick up on the T31 codes.